Hey everyone, Theo here. This is my artist review of the iPad Air 5. My review is late because I did not pre-order this tablet. Anyway, I hope you have not purchased this tablet yet because, while it's a good tablet, it has fantastic drawing performance. It's just not worth the money, especially when you compare it with other options available from Apple. Actually, the most important part of this video is the section where I talk about whether this is worth the money. You can use the timestamps provided to jump to that section. If you want to watch the whole video because you want to hear everything I have to say about this tablet, let's start with what's included. 2 stickers, a USB-C to C cable, quick start guide and warranty info, a 20-watt charger with collapsible pins. This is the iPad Air 5 2022. The design looks very similar to the 11-inch iPad Pro, except the bezels here are slightly thicker because this is a 10.9-inch display. There are 4 flat sides. On this side, we have the volume buttons, and there's this thing where you can attach the Apple Pencil to magnetically for charging and pairing. The fingerprint sensor and power button is here. There are 4 sets of speaker grills, however, the audio is only coming out from the bottom 2 sets. This color that I have here is Starlight, which is this soft, warm yellow with shine because it's metal. I like the textured surface. I've seen some reviews saying that when you press down in the middle section here, the back actually moves very slightly. I have that issue here as well. I noticed that slight movement when I picked up the tablet like this, but it's a minor issue. If you're using the tablet with a case, you're not going to notice that at all. That's a 12 megapixel f1.8 camera. And on the front, there is no face unlock. There is a camera though, it's here at the top in portrait orientation, but there is no face unlock, so you have to use the fingerprint unlock, and it works very fast and effectively. Now when you're holding the tablet this way, you're actually covering the bottom 2 sets of the speakers where the sound is coming from. So it affects audio quality, but overall audio quality is still pretty good. It's loud and it's clear, especially when you are not covering the sides. Resolution of the display is 2360 by 1640. Pixel density is 264, so all the visuals are very sharp. There is no noticeable pixelation. The display size of 10.9 inches is a good size when it comes to drawing. This is how big the display is compared to my A5 size sketchbook. So the drawing surface area is almost similar in size. This is Clip Studio Paint, so even with the toolbar on the left and the palette on the right, you still get a good amount of space to work with for drawing. Here's the size comparison of the iPad Air versus the 12.9-inch iPad Pro from 2018. This is 461 grams and this is 633 grams. So with this larger iPad Pro, I always have to set it down against a surface on my lap or on a table for drawing. With this iPad Air, with this 10.9-inch iPad Air, I can actually hold it quite comfortably in one hand and draw on it. If you're using a case with the tablet, it's obviously going to be heavier, but it's still very manageable. So the colors on this display look terrific. The colors are vibrant, very beautiful, and the visuals are really sharp. One thing I really like about Apple iPads is they have this anti-reflective coating. So this is not as reflective compared to other Android tablets, and this is fantastic. It really reduces a lot of glare, especially when you're working in an environment where there are lots of lights reflecting off the display. One feature the iPad Air 5 has that the previous model doesn't is the center stage feature. So this front-facing camera that you see here is actually an ultra-wide camera, and the software can position the frame so that your face is always in the frame. And I discovered that it can actually detect the face of this Lego figurine. So that's pretty cool. The display is laminated, so there is no gap between the LCD and the glass. So when you are writing or drawing, it's going to look as if the line is appearing directly beneath the pen tip. The pen is quite smooth on the glass surface. If you want a more tactile drawing experience, you can consider using a matte screen protector. I used to use matte screen protectors, but I've stopped using them because I find that the screen protector would diffuse the light or reflection on the display to the extent that there is this white haze, which looks very glaring to me. However, the matte screen protector does provide a very nice tactile drawing experience. It's just that I don't like the anti-glare on it. So this display has a 60 Hz refresh rate. It's not 120 like the iPad Pro. Having ProMotion 120 Hz refresh rate is certainly nice. However, if you don't have it, I don't think you are missing out. When it comes to drawing, there isn't really much difference between 60 Hz and 120 Hz, because when you are drawing, unless you are drawing really fast, unless you are drawing long sweeping lines like this, chances are you are not going to notice the difference between 60 and 120 Hz refresh rate, especially if you haven't seen 120 Hz refresh rate before. iPad Air 5 uses Apple Pencil tool, which features a flat side that you can use to attach to the side of the tablet for pairing and for charging. Do not buy the wrong Apple Pencil. Apple Pencil 1 is not supported by this tablet. And this stylus actually has some shortcuts. So for example, with this app Procreate, you can double tap to use the eraser. And you can double tap again to switch back. The shortcut may vary depending on the app you use. If you don't want to use the shortcut, you can always turn it off. I actually don't use the shortcuts because sometimes when I change the position of how I hold the pen, the shortcuts may be activated accidentally, which is why I don't use the shortcut. Apple Pencil is very accurate and sensitive, so the overall drawing experience is very satisfying. Initial activation force is minimal, so you can draw thin lines really easily and press down hard to draw thick lines. For example, you can apply almost no pressure at all, and as long as the pen tip is touching the display, you will be able to get a thin line. This is how thick the line really is. Straight lines can be drawn very easily. There are no issues with diagonal line jitter. Depending on the app you use, you can get perfect palm rejection. So for example, with Procreate, I have set the app to accept only pen input. So if I use my finger to draw, nothing will happen because now the app only accepts pen input. But I can still use my finger gestures, and finger gestures are very accurate, very responsive. Zoom in and out, pan, rotate, all those actions are very responsive. When it comes to drawing, you are definitely going to get a terrific drawing experience with the iPad, actually with any iPad, because of the Apple Pencil. It's so accurate. The main differences between the various models of the iPad actually comes down to the features. In terms of drawing performance, you are going to get almost the same drawing experience. If you are going to be drawing most of the time, especially at home, I highly recommend you get a proper tablet stand. This one that I'm using is the Parblo PR100 with adjustable height. I'll put the links to where you can find this in the video description below. This is extremely stable and can be used for tablets of various sizes. So with the iPad Air, I can actually put this on the right side here, and I still have space to put my phone on the left. So I'm almost done with this drawing. The drawing process is really smooth. I mean, the lines, they always come out the way I expect them to, so I don't have to undo that often, which obviously is going to save a lot of time. So this is my sketchy sketch before coloring. So there are no surprises when it comes to drawing on the iPad. it's very predictable performance that you can expect. Right, so now I'm just left to color this. The coloring process is actually the more time-consuming part because there are so many tiny areas to color. So with the tilt sensitivity, it works really great when it comes to covering large areas. For example, if I want to cover the sky or paint the sky, I can just tilt it. I can of course increase the brush size or choose a different brush just to paint the sky, but I like the texture with this brush. This brush, by the way, is Tinderbox. It's the default brush provided by Procreate. And time for some clouds. So this sketch is almost done. I just need to add some textures. You can add dots very easily just by tapping on the display. So the overall drawing process is very smooth. I did not encounter any glitches. Let's talk about how much storage space you need. iPad OS and the system files take up 12.9 gigs before I installed any apps. If you're just going to be drawing a few times each week, 64 gigs of storage may be sufficient. However, if you're going to draw regularly, or if you are a professional, I highly recommend you get more storage. Let's take a look at some of the artworks I have created with Procreate and look at their file sizes, starting with this. This took 70 megabytes of storage, which is inclusive of 23 megabytes of time-lapse video. In case you don't know, Procreate will record a time-lapse video. By default, you can turn off that feature or you can delete the video afterwards. So without the video, the file size for this is 50 megabytes. And this is a 4K resolution file. This is 483 megabytes. So this is huge. And without the video, it's 250 megabytes, which is still huge. This is a very simple sketch without much details. This is just 16 megabytes. This is 12 megabytes. This is 67. So even though this sketch actually looks very simple, but due to the high resolution, it actually takes up more space compared to this one and this one. I don't consider my art to be very complex or use too many layers. So for this piece, it only has 6 layers and it takes up 150 megabytes of storage. So let's say on average, my files take 100 megabytes. So I will be able to create 10 files with 1 gig of storage or 100 files with 10 gigs of storage. Does that sound enough for you? Just note that the file sizes can vary significantly depending on the complexity of your artwork. These are the number of layers you can create with Procreate for an A4 size 300 dpi canvas. So both the iPad Air 5 and the M1 iPad Pro have 8 gigs of RAM and you can create up to 116 layers, which is a lot of layers. If you are working with A3 size, you can create up to 58 layers, which is still a lot of layers. By the way, if you happen to be using the iPad mini 6 from 2021, let me know how many layers you can create because the number that I have here was at launch. If this is your first time getting an iPad, I just want to let you know that there is a huge variety of very capable drawing apps available. The most popular one is probably Procreate. Concepts is one of my favorites. They also have Clip Studio Paint, which is exactly the same as the desktop version, so it has all the features. And there are just so many others to choose from. They also have some pretty good vector apps such as Vectornator. For graphic design apps, there are Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, Affinity Designer, and Affinity Photo. If you want to edit photos, you can consider Adobe Lightroom, and for video editing, there is LumaFusion. The main difference between Android tablets versus iPads when it comes to creating visual work is The graphic design apps available on the iPad have very good typesetting features, so you can adjust things like leading, kerning, the space between paragraphs. You can have paragraphs, you can align the text, you can justify the text, you can choose different fonts, you can install fonts, and that to me is quite valuable as a graphic designer. However, if you are just going to be drawing, in terms of drawing performance and capability, the drawing apps on the iPad would match the drawing apps on Android tablets. Battery life is really good. I can get around 9 hours of battery life on average with auto brightness in a bright room environment. So is the iPad Air 5 worth the money? Well, it is a good tablet. However, in terms of value for money, in my opinion, I think there are better options out there. Let me show you the options. So if you take a look at the refurbished store on Apple's website, by the way, the refurbished store may or may not be available depending on your country. So that's the link to the refurbished store. And just tap here to go to the iPad section. So these are the refurbished iPads sold directly by Apple. And just look for the iPad Pro 11. More specifically, look for the model from 2020. It's the one with the square camera module. So this, in my opinion, are better deals compared to the iPad Air 5. So if you are looking at the iPad Air 5 base model, it only comes with 64 gigs of storage. If you feel like it's not enough, the next storage tier is 256 gigs and you have to pay an extra $200 for that. All the prices here are accurate at the time of this review and they are all in US dollar currency. So why not just spend an extra $10 to get the refurbished 11-inch iPad Pro from 2020? For that extra $10, you get a total of 128 gigs of storage. You get ProMotion 120Hz refresh rate. You get 4-way speakers, all that for just an extra $10. And if you take a look at the model with 256 gigs of storage, that's an even better deal. The iPad Air 5 is $799. The refurbished iPad Pro is $689. This is $100 or more or less compared to the iPad Air 5, and you can use the savings to buy yourself the Apple Pencil 2. So you might be thinking, why not just get the iPad Air 5 since it's using the latest processor, the M1 processor, and it has 8 gigs of RAM versus the 6 gigs of RAM from the older iPad Pro? Well, when it comes to drawing performance and the drawing experience, it's going to be the same. I'm still using the iPad Pro from 2018 and it has the same drawing performance and experience as the iPad Air 5. So in my opinion, in terms of value for money, the refurbished 11-inch iPad Pro from 2020 wins hands down. The only downside for the refurbished model would be they are limited in stock, so they are not always in stock. Yesterday I saw some models for the 128 and 256 gigs. Today I don't see them, but instead I see the 512 gigs. So the important thing here is to make sure you get the right model. It's the one with the square camera module, not the one with this circular camera module. This is from 2018. This is from 2020. Refurbished products from Apple could be items returned by customers during the return period, or they can be repaired products. They still carry the 1-year standard warranty from Apple. In my opinion, these are more worth the money compared to the iPad Air 5. Alright, to conclude, this is a good tablet. There are many things I like with very few downsides. However, if you can find a refurbished 11-inch iPad Pro from 2020, I highly recommend you get that model instead because you're going to get more features for almost the same amount of money or even less depending on which model you get. So if you urgently need a tablet but you cannot find a refurbished unit, I guess you can consider this. But if you have time to wait for the refurbished model to appear, or wait for this to go onto the refurbished store, and you can get this at maybe 15% off the official retail price. So that's my review of the iPad Air 5. I hope this is useful. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.